Hey, friend. Happy Wednesday. So good to see you. I feel like it's been a hot second. I was traveling last week, so I missed getting together with you. But alas, we are here together today, which makes all the difference. I've been really looking forward to this. I hope you have been looking forward to this time together as well. I always feel like I get so many good pieces of advice and nuggets of wisdom and tactics and strategies and recommendations that I end up Googling later or using. So I always really value our time together. If you're new here, welcome. We're pretty friendly around these parts, as you can probably tell by the chat, because we're already chatting with each other. Now, there's two ways that you can spend this time with us. You can lean back, relax with your caffeine of choice, and just take in all the goodness. That's one way, and we're okay with that. But what we'd like a little bit more is if you could lean forward, get those fingers typing, and join us by giving us your recommendations, your tactics, your insights, because sharing is caring, and you're really smart too. So we want to learn from you as well. So you can already see that Kelly and Jeff and James and Shelby, we've already got some great people logging in, saying hi in the chat, and I hope you will add your voice in there as well. Now, don't be alarmed. If you are listening to this on your favorite podcast network while you fold the laundry or walk the dog or do the dishes, that's okay too, because I will call out all of the recommendations and things that I'm seeing in real time so you don't feel like you're missing out just because you can't be here with us live. And if you want to send this to a friend afterwards and that friend is like, I don't really like watching video, that's okay. You can send them the audio version as well. We got something for everybody over here. It's sort of like a content buffet. You want video, we have that. You want audio only, we have that. You want a live to chat with other people, we have that. We're a buffet crew over here. Okay, you can get a little bit of whatever you are feeling like. So we would love to see that. A big hi to Liz. It's so good to see you. And Darius coming in from North Carolina. Oh, I love seeing Rachel and all these great, amazing people that are joining us today to share their insights. So normally we are chatting with somebody else, and we're going to be doing that in the coming weeks. Don't worry. But I wanted to have a session because I feel like selfishly, I get so many great recommendations from you on stuff that you're seeing in the world and that you're collecting and you're pondering and you're thinking about and you're learning and you're recommending. So I thought we could do a little exchange, right? A little exchange of ideas. I brought some things that I've been nerding out on, and I hope you maybe brought some things that you're loving, whether it's books you're reading or podcasts that you're listening to. We'll talk about books in a little bit, but I definitely want any recommendations you have from a content standpoint. And to kind of, I'm going to kick us off because I know you like it when I go first. It takes the pressure off. So I will go first. Rest assured, you can be like, whew, Kim's going first. I'm not going to be like, oh my God, David, quick, you go first. No. Or, oh my God, quick, Darius, you go first. No, don't worry. I will go first. And the first thing I wanted to show you is a really interesting clip from the founder of ChatGPT. The parent company is OpenAI, if you are not familiar, and that founder's name is Sam Altman. And he is, to some, a very divisive figure. Some people look at him and say, oh my gosh, you're like building this revolutionary technology. We love you. And then other people are like, you're making the robots come alive and the robots are going to take over the world and we hate you. So he's a very controversial character, depending on which kind of way you look at it. Some people are like, yay, robots. And other people are like, robots. I like to think I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not totally yay robots because it kind of freaks me out. And I feel like we've seen all the movies like Will Smith with iRobot and that sort of thing. But then also, I am sort of interested in it. So I think that it's, if you stick your head in the sand when it comes to new technology or new things, then that doesn't help anything either. Where would we be if we had stuck our head in the sand about LinkedIn all those years ago when we first learned about the platform, right? We probably would be not as connected as we are now, and certainly not having the amazing relationships and resources that we have now because of LinkedIn. So saying all that, I know that we have spent some time over the last couple months hearing from interesting people that have sort of delved into the world of, ChatGPT or Claude, this sort of AI interface, and how do you use it? And I definitely love those conversations. But I saw this clip, which I'm going to share with us shortly, but I kind of want to tee up the clip so that you can share your thoughts with me as well. But what I always think is really interesting, and I know that you probably see it as well when you're talking to people, maybe it's like your sister who's a certain age, or maybe it's a mentee who's younger than you. And, I think the first layer is one, how are we all adapting to this new technology? So that's kind of like layer one. But I think the second layer, which is also really cool to kind of nerd out on, is how are different people using that technology. So it's one thing to say for me, okay, I'm a 39-year-old female living in the United States. How am I using ChatGPT? It's another thing to say, well, what is a 17-year-old living in Germany who's a boy? How is he using it? And, again, how is a 63-year-old living in Cape Town using it, who recently retired? So just kind of looking at not only just how do we use the technology in general, it's kind of like the foundation, but then really how are the different people using technology? So again, I wanted to show this clip. This was Fortune magazine, or not even magazine, it's a media platform now, Fortune. And so I just wanted to show this clip to you because I thought I kind of been thinking a lot about it since I saw it last week.
Maybe you talk to an average 20-year-old and watch how they use ChatGPT. And then you go talk to an average 35-year-old and how they use it, or some other service. And the difference is unbelievable. It reminds me of when the smartphone came out and every kid was able to use it super well. And older people just took 3 years to figure out how to do basic stuff. And then, of course, people integrate. But this sort of generational divide on AI tools right now is crazy. And I think companies are just another symptom of that. That stuff I think is all cool and impressive. And there's this other thing where they don't really make life decisions without asking ChatGPT what they should do. Gross oversimplification, but older people use ChatGPT as a Google replacement. Maybe people in their 20s and 30s use it as a life advisor something. And then people in college use it as an operating system. Maybe you talk to an average.
So I thought that was really interesting. So kind of saying, some people are using it as a replacement for Google. So instead of typing into Google, I'm making this up because it's quite silly, but instead of typing into Google how to unclog the sink, you would type into ChatGPT how to unclog the sink. So again, as Sam is kind of describing, using it as a Google replacement. But then taking it one step further, he's saying that the younger generations are not just saying, oh, it's a Google replacement, but really using it either as a life advisor, or again, he kind of takes it one step further with the under 20 set, which, well, the under 20 set, they're foreign concepts to me. With my nephew, I'm you're 11. How do you think? How do you navigate this world? But, the even younger generations really using it as an operating system. So everything according to him, which of course, he's the founder of the company, so we have to take that with a grain of salt. But, looking at that. So anyways, I saw this last week. So this clip got posted, just to show you, this clip got posted to Fortune magazine on May 14th. So I think I saw it either that day or a couple days later. And I did a little experiment with myself where I said to myself, okay, I've been using it kind of as the older generations would use it, which is instead of putting into something into Google, like how to, unplug my sink, I would instead kind of go by Sam's direction and take it one step further and start using it as a life advisor. So I did this experiment. Well, today's Wednesday, so I've been doing it about a week. And I wanted to kind of nerd out and tell you what I found from that. But I want to kind of see what you thought of that clip really quick. So Darius is saying, this is literally what I've been thinking about a lot lately, the generational differences, including how students use AI. So Exactly. That is, exactly the type of thing that I feel like we've been really thinking about and nerding out on in this household over here. And Liz is saying, like, yeah, that's really interesting. And Jeff is saying, here's an example. Yesterday, I asked ChatGPT about advice on how to obtain a Portuguese citizenship, and it gave me, luckily, what I knew to be outdated information about golden passports. So, Jeff brings up such a good point here, which I always have been telling people. And I think it's kind of a good thing to anchor yourself on, that ChatGPT is a really smart, really clever intern. And we love smart interns and we love clever interns, but an intern is still an intern. And what does that mean if you've ever had an intern? We always check the intern's work because I know I have made the mistake at a corporate job, and maybe you have as well, where you ask somebody for a piece of information, they do the work, they give it to you, you're in a rush, you're in a fluster, and you think, okay, I got this information from our wonderful intern, Jeff, and I took that information and then I just sent it right to my boss. And your boss says, well, I caught these 5 mistakes. And you turn and go, gosh, Jeff, the intern, there are 5 mistakes in that. That is sort of how you have to treat ChatGPT. You can't treat it as like, oh, everything the intern gives back to me is 100% correct. If you see something that you're like, I don't know if that's true, maybe ask the intern a few more questions. I know I'm kind of constantly really correcting my ChatGPT, but I wanted to tell you about a little experiment that I've been doing that maybe you would want to do as well. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. So I took the challenge, even though Sam Altman didn't give me this challenge, I took it as a challenge to, instead of using it as a Google, so how Jeff just described and how I described, which is unfortunately for us, Jeff, the older generation way of using ChatGPT, I've been trying to use it for the last week as what Sam said, the kind of 20-something set is using it as more of a life coach, go-to resource. So what I started to do is I started a new ChatGPT and I put in information about myself. Simple stuff, guys. Like, and I decided that it was going to be like my food friend, like my food coach or food, almost like I had a little nutritionist or like a little private chef in my pocket. Because unfortunately for me, I've not won the lottery, and thus I do not have a private chef and I do not have a private nutritionist. But one day, maybe I will have those things. So what I did is I started a new ChatGPT and I said, I'm a 39-year-old female. I put all sorts of stuff about, I'm trying to maximize my protein intake. Here are all the vitamins that I'm taking. And, here are my goals. Here's my current weight. Here's my height. About 8 months ago, I happened to do a DEXA scan. And for anybody who's not familiar with what a DEXA scan is, that's basically, it's like, it costs about $90 here in Austin. I don't know what it costs where you are. But it's a scan. It's almost like an MRI. It takes like maybe 10 minutes. And it basically tells you how much your bones weigh, how much muscle you have in your body, how much fat you have in your body, how much visceral fat, how much your organs weigh. I don't know, for $90, I thought it was kind of interesting. So I did it. It was cool. Some people have Oura rings and, other ways, Apple watches. I don't have either one. So I'm not necessarily tracking my biometrics that way. But it was kind of a way for me to see what was going on in my body. I uploaded that to my ChatGPT. I kind of gave it all this information. And what I said was, I feel like I have a really good idea of what to eat at home. You know what to eat at home. It's all the boring stuff like chicken, broccoli, rice, that sort of thing. But I was telling the ChatGPT what I have trouble with personally is when I go out to restaurants, how do I know that I'm making the right choices? How do I know that I'm making the right choices for that day? How do I know I'm making the right choices for me, given all my goals? And so for the last week, what I did is I logged every single thing into ChatGPT, what I ate. very simply, I would either type or say, for breakfast today, I had a Fage yogurt. I put 10 blueberries in it and about a handful of granola or whatever. And then when I would go to a restaurant, I would take a picture. You can do this. Take a picture of the menu, write in ChatGPT. There's a little plus sign, and you can see that you can upload a camera. And I would say to the ChatGPT, what should I eat? What should I order on this menu? And I have to say, I've been doing this experiment for about a week, prompted in this nerd out by that Fortune clip that I just showed you from Sam Altman. And it's been really interesting. I have to say, am I going to keep it up forever? I don't know. But the last week has been a really interesting experiment because I have found I'm making better choices when I'm out. And I'm also kind of using it as a guideline for myself and learning a little bit. So I would think to myself, okay, I'm at this restaurant. I really should order, I'm making this up, the chicken. And when I put it into ChatGPT, ChatGPT will actually say, Kim, you actually haven't had a lot of iron intake today. So what I actually think you should order is the steak fajitas. I don't know, kind of interesting. Like I probably wouldn't have ordered this. And I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, everything that it tells me to eat, I eat. No, if I don't want the steak fajitas, I don't order them. But just kind of, again, using it as an exercise to see what it would recommend, trying to use it, as Sam said, as like a life coach, which is apparently how the 20-somethings are using it. And really just trying to get an idea of how to talk to it. And David is asking a really important question here, which is, can you ask ChatGPT to help you to use ChatGPT better? Not only can you actually do that, you can say to the ChatGPT, and by the way, I say this all the time, if this is confusing, or if I've given you information that you are confused by, tell me or ask me questions. Here's the menu at the restaurant I'm at. Ask me questions if you need. And sometimes it will ask, hey, the picture that you took is kind of blurry. Can you take it again? Or it will say, remind me, what did you have for lunch? What, you told me there were 2 different options, but you didn't tell me what you finally had. So, that's just an example. And Patricia is saying, are you using ChatGPT generically to represent all models, or is ChatGPT literally your go-to? Patricia, ChatGPT is my personal go-to. Now, I was just with my friend Rachel last week, and hers is Claude. So, Claude is her go-to. Twofold, I think I was curious more so about this as an exercise. I don't think it necessarily matters whether you are using ChatGPT or Claude or some of these other ones. I was just thinking more like for the challenge, just using it, more so using any platform in a way that the younger folk are using it. I thought that would be really interesting. And Jeff is saying, this is super insightful. Maybe I should do this to get advice on how to land a new job. I think that was the biggest thing, Jeff. I mean, I know that you're saying this probably a little bit tongue in cheek, but I think the thing I learned the most in the last week, as I really tried to think of this ChatGPT more as like a life coach or a life advisor, similar to that clip that was just shown by Sam Altman, that it's an interesting experiment to try. So for a week, I actually would. I'd say I sent my resume to these 3 people, or I did XYZ, and kind of use it at, like, try it. Listen, I'm going to be real. It's weird. Like at first you're like, okay, this is so crazy. Like I'm talking to this freaking ChatGPT. This makes no sense. Like, why does it care what I ate for my snack today? like it's going to feel uncomfortable. So I just want to get that out of the way in case later on you're like, well, Kim seemed to think that this was so easy. No, I'm telling you now, you're going to feel a little like cuckoo. You're going to feel like, wait, why am I like talking to this ChatGPT about, whatever it is you pick? I picked food and nutrition. That was kind of like an easy stepping stone for me personally. It kind of seemed like the least complicated and like kind of a good starting point. So I don't know. I feel like it doesn't hurt. It's definitely worth a go, I think. And I think it's certainly coming from Sam Altman, that was really interesting. So I saw this, like I said, I think it was like Tuesday or something like that. And then, as one does, I subscribe to like a million bazillion newsletters, as I'm sure you do as well. And one of them was showing me this new report from GWI, and we will put the link for this report in the chat. But it was a really interesting report. It was talking about social media. They basically did this like giant report all about how people are using social media, and then specifically how different age groups are using social media. And it's a very big report, so I won't bore you with like, the pages and pages. If you really want to nerd out like I do, by all means, go down the rabbit hole, read it all. I found it interesting. You might be like, just give me the highlights, which I totally get. But there was one nugget in there that I thought was interesting. And I saw this again. It was like 2 or 3 days after the Sam Altman clip. So it was kind of like that was fresh on my mind. And what was really interesting was there was a part of the report that specifically talked about young people, 16 to 34-year-olds, and what they use social media for. And the reason I thought that this was really interesting was the number, like 1 through 4 reasons were not what I would have picked. So if you said to me, Kim, why do people use social media? I would have said puppy videos, dog clips, funny memes, clips from shows, arguing about Star Wars, interior decorating, gardening, like entertainment. That's what my answer would have been. I would have been like, oh, people use social media for entertainment. That's what they use it for. But instead, what this found, which I thought was, again, just really kind of like an interesting thing that I would have not expected, was instead what a lot of people are using it for is making new contacts, which I thought was really interesting. So using it to literally, talk to people, which I was like, okay, what? Like, I would have never thought that. Talking to people, I'm trying to make it bigger for everybody who's watching virtually. And instead of making it bigger, I think I just gummed it up a bit. But talking to people being the number 2 thing, which I thought was really interesting. Number 3 was supporting and connecting good causes, which again, never would have guessed that. Like, oh, I found puppy shelter, or I found a cool place to donate to, like all those things that you see on social media of GoFundMes. I would have thought, wow, people are actually going on social media to find worthy causes. I thought that was a really interesting statistic. And then number 4, work-related networking and research. And what I thought that was over, by the way, what I thought people were using it for, which was like, live events, talking about the Knicks game, basketball, sports, Taylor Swift concerts, that sort of thing. Like, again, entertainment based. Really, instead saying, no, we're looking at it for charity and like finding good causes to donate to. We're looking at it for making new contacts, networking. We're using it for work-related research. Like, that to me was just, again, maybe you're more dialed in than I am. Someone wrote, to be fair, you're outside of that 16 to 34-year-old group. Ouch, straight to the heart. Yes, I am. However, and that's a joke, I'm sure. But I also, what's not a joke is I really do think that part of the way that you stay current at work and in life is you have to constantly be curious. You have to constantly be filling your head with, I'm curious about this. What are the younger generations doing? What is the new technology? how can I use that new technology? How can I play with that new technology and figure out, get deeper in? And so while I yes, I'm outside of that age group, I think it is important to understand that new age group and to understand kind of what's coming up, like the next wave of people and how they're doing it, because I think that that's really important to stay current. You never want to be somebody in a meeting or somebody at the job where somebody says something and you go, what's that? You want to be the person in the meeting who's going, hey, has anyone else tried this? Hey, did anyone else see that report? Hey, did anyone else find that really surprising? So I say all that because I think you have to kind of constantly be really curious and stay really curious, especially about whether it's ChatGPT or social media. I think that sort of thing is just really, really important. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting, and again, it's a larger study. You can go down the rabbit hole and look at the whole report. Again, if you like that kind of stuff, you'll love it. If you don't like that kind of stuff, you're going to be like, Kim, I am so bored. So take that with a grain of salt. But I just wanted to highlight that one part of the study because I thought it was really interesting. And I definitely thought it was interesting that if you yourself have any causes that you're passionate about, something that I feel like people always say is like, oh, if you volunteer somewhere or if you're raising money for a cause, post it on LinkedIn, post it on social media. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, but like, I feel a little weird, like asking people for money, or, oh, I feel a little weird, like posting about this thing. And what that stat really told me was that, Kim, those fears are kind of baloney. Those fears are unwarranted because the number 3 reason that people in that age group are going on social media is to find good causes, is to find stuff that they can get behind and support monetarily or with their voices. So I say all that because if you have a cause that you're excited about, or you have something that you think people should check out, maybe posting it is not the craziest idea in the world. Even if you think like, oh, I don't know, is LinkedIn the right place for this? Or is social media, the right place for this? Sherry's asking about my grand experiment with nutrition on ChatGPT and is asking, does it give you calorie or micronutrient counts? So I can tell it what I'm eating. So I can say like, I'm eating half a cup of spinach, or I'm eating an RX bar, the blueberry flavor or whatever it is. And it can go online and find those nutritional facts about the blueberry bar. To Jeff's point, sometimes I kind of go and look and make sure, like, are you looking up the correct blueberry stats? Like, you are looking up the right calories. And again, I've had to correct it maybe 1 or 2 times in the last week. So it definitely is doing 90% of the time a good job. But again, it's a glorified intern. So you just kind of want to like check it if you're going to be like, well, I want to make sure that I absolutely get all the protein. Like, again, for me, nutrition is like, it's kind of a flowy subject. I'm like, I need to eat more protein, but I'm not like, if I don't eat 100 grams a day, today is a failure. So you can also take pictures of your food. I've also read some articles that down the line, they're improving the technology so that when you do take a picture of your food, it will analyze it. I know, totally crazy. I don't think we're totally there yet, but again, play with it. That would be like kind of my imparting thing to you is play with it. Try it to count your micronutrients or try it to count your macros. It can't hurt. I think it's certainly, it's worth an experiment. And it sounds like Jeff is going to experiment as well with how he's doing it. And Kelly is also saying like, get into the mind of what other people are doing and how they're doing it. So I think it's worth a go. Again, totally open to hear what you come back with and what you find. Along the same line of reports and, to echo Jeff's point about really digging into job hunting and job search, what we saw on that last report was really that people are looking at social media for those job opportunities for that sort of thing. There's another report that came out this week. I'll also include that in the show notes and in the chat, so you can check that out. But again, I'll just go over this one really briefly because, again, if you don't want to nerd out on LinkedIn, you're probably going to be very bored by this. But the one part that I thought was really interesting about this was the highlight being basically that engagement on LinkedIn has increased. So I know you've heard me harp about this countless times. You're probably so sick of it. But if somebody tells you that LinkedIn is dead, or LinkedIn is where old people go, or it doesn't, help you to post on LinkedIn, or it doesn't help you to network on LinkedIn, or it doesn't help you to join communities on LinkedIn or lives, I would love for you to copy and paste and send them this report, because what this report is saying is that is in fact not the case. That instead, engagement on LinkedIn has increased by 30% year over year. There are more people coming to use LinkedIn every single day. So really, increasing your time spent on the platform is not necessarily a bad idea. So again, this report kind of goes into more like posting and impressions and video versus text only and images and all that sort of thing. So if you're like Kim, snooze-a-thon, do not care about the ins and outs of LinkedIn, don't worry about it. You will not find that report interesting, and that is a-okay, because not every report is going to be interesting to every single person. And I realize that. So I say all that because I just think it's important to, if you do want to nerd out on that stuff, go deep and nerd it out as much as possible. So, I love that James is saying in regards to him using ChatGPT or Claude or any of these AI programs. James said, I used it last year to help me plan a motorcycle trip around Lake Michigan. It worked out great. So this year I'm having it help me plan a trip to Tail of the Dragon. I have definitely heard of people using ChatGPT. And again, I'm saying ChatGPT, but again, you could substitute that with Claude or any of these other platforms. I've definitely heard of it in terms of travel and being able to help you figure out, okay, it's this many miles to get from point A to point B. It's going to take you this long on average, the traffic, just kind of having you figure out the more finer points. And I think that that's a really great way to use it. And again, remember, it is a glorified intern. I want you to always check its work, especially if you're going to pay money. I've heard stories where people say, but ChatGPT told me that, the XYZ opened at 10 a.m., but it turns out it didn't open until 11. Okay. So, ChatGPT is not perfect. You want to always kind of check its work, especially if you're like, I bought a ticket to this thinking that we could go all day, but it turns out in the summer, they only do half days, that type of thing. So take that into consideration. But James just gave a beautiful example that if you didn't want to try something like that for nutrition, maybe your upcoming travel plans, if you're doing any traveling, any road trips over the summer, where you're going, what rest stops are along the way, what food options are along the way for you to eat. I think that could be a really interesting way for you to play with it a little bit easier. Okay, so I would love for you to type into the chat if you're with us live. If you're not with us live, you can just imagine in your head. I'd love to hear what you are currently reading. And I ask that because some of my best recommendations of what to read come from this group right here. And in one of our past sessions, I apologize. I actually tried to go back and figure out who recommended this to me. But after we do these sessions, a lot of times when I am writing the notes to myself, I will just put Coffee with Kim and then the name of the book, or Coffee with Kim, the link to the video or whatever that you share with me. And then I don't actually put who shared it. which note to self might be helpful in the future. Like I don't actually say, oh, Jen told me to read this book, or oh, Jeff gave me this video link. I just put Coffee with Kim because in my head, I'm like, oh, we all looked at this link, or we all said that this book was good, not a specific person. So one of the things that I got from one of our past sessions was someone was talking about the author Ryan Holiday, and they were specifically talking about one of his books about courage. So I added that to my Libby. If you don't know about Libby, where have you been? But it's basically the library's version of audiobooks. Yes, if you didn't know, libraries allow you to do audiobooks now in addition to books. And your library can let you either check out a book or listen to a book. The Libby app is what lets you listen to a book, and your regular library login, whatever that is what allows you to do a book. I don't know about other countries. I'm only talking about America. So I don't know in other countries if your libraries will let you listen to it. I think they do, but I don't know that for absolute sure. So someone will have to correct me. But I started reading, I think Courage is Calling. Calling is Courage. This is where I get a little dyslexic. And I'm like, there's a courage and there's the word calling, and it's somewhere in the title. And I'm about 3/4 the way through. It reminds me very, very much of Malcolm Gladwell. It sounds like James is also reading some Malcolm Gladwell. But if you've ever read Malcolm Gladwell, I feel like kind of his claim to fame is the way he writes, is he kind of gives the overall lesson and then kind of gives little anecdotes of where that lesson has shown up. So like, in David and Goliath, this story happened, but also, XYZ entrepreneur went against the grain. So it's kind of like an overarching lesson, and then like 3 or 4 kind of real life examples from history or from current day of what like backs up that thesis. So really interesting book. Like I said, I'm about 3/4 the way through. Reminds me very much of Malcolm Gladwell. If you like Malcolm Gladwell, I think you'll also like this Ryan Holiday book. Thank you, Kelly. Courage is Calling. Like I said, I knew it was calling and I knew it was courage, but I just didn't know which order it went in. Courage is Calling. I guess what else would it be? Courage Called? I don't know. Courage is Calling is the right title. I think that you will really, really like that. So, okay, lots of recommendations in here, which I love. And Shelby just made a good point. Even if you're not currently reading it, but you just think that it was a really good read, in her case, she's saying, I'm not currently reading, but I really, really loved The Comfort Crisis. So even if it's something that you're like, okay, well, I finished that book 2 weeks ago, but it was a really good book, still include it, because I would still love to know what that is. Because again, I get a lot of my book recommendations from here. And I would also say a lot of the book recommendations that I'm seeing on here, Mel Robbins with the Let Them Theory, Reverse the Search, Madeline Mann's book, which we talked about with Madeline a few weeks ago, which was already really good. Darius is listening to Madison Beard's memoir called The Half of It on Spotify. I love that you guys are also adding in some really kind of fun reads as well, because this, but I always try to do kind of like fun reads mixed with more, I guess, smart reads, if you will. So I love that there's Proof of Heaven, a journey of a neurosurgeon who had an experience that is worth hearing. Ooh, intriguing. So Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander. Jeff is giving that recommendation. I feel like that sounds super interesting. And it sounds almost like the book, When Breath Becomes Air, that is also a neurosurgeon. Spoiler alert, very sad ending. Very inspirational, but very sad. So read with caution, definitely. When Breath Becomes Air, though, is also like, I think it was on like Time's list of like top books like ever. And I love that Shelby is currently rereading Harry Potter. Always a good reread. I am actually rewatching the movies because when I was traveling last week, they had it on my United flight. So I watched like 2.5 Harry Potter movies on my trip home. So always a good one. Joyride by David Key is recommended as a really great book. I'd love to know, Joyride, is that like, fun? Is that like a fun read? Joyride sounds like a fun read to me, but it could also be, I could see it being an educational read as well. But anything by Joanne Hari, Stolen Focus. Ooh, Stolen Focus. If anybody has not read The Anxious Generation, also highly recommend that you read that. That is a little more dense, especially if you're doing like a Libby audio book version. I want to say that one's like 12 hours. It's a dense one. It's a little meaty. So maybe it's not like a fun summer kind of effervescent read, but really interesting. I mean, top line basically being, social media, kids, screen time makes them anxious. What can we do to stop it? That sort of thing. So I found that to be really interesting as well. The Anxious Generation. If you have not heard of that or have not yet read that, I think that would be a really interesting one for you to read. So anyways, I'm currently reading Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday. However, afterwards, because of course I already got that in Libby as well, my second read will also be a Ryan Holiday, where if I read, I mean listen. So my second listen, when I get done with the last little fourth of Courage is Calling, will be another Ryan Holiday book. And that one is The Obstacle is the Way. And again, somebody recommended that to us in my TBR. By the way, it's called a TBR list. I learned that from the young folk. And it's called To Be Read, TBR, To Be Read, my TBR list. A lot of times on my TBR list, it will just say, Joyride, David Key, Coffee with Kim, as opposed to Joyride by David Key as recommended by, individual name. So anyways, somebody recommended The Obstacle is the Way in our group. So that will be my next listening read. I love that Jeff had this comment as we're talking about kind of like nerding out and, really kind of digging deep on things. He said, Kim, those sponsored posts on LinkedIn are growing for sure. And if you missed this over the last couple of months, I have said, I think I even brought up a clip from me in 2001 saying like, this day will come when LinkedIn starts to monetize individual posts like they do on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and TikTok, etc. And LinkedIn was like the lone holdout. And then about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, alas, LinkedIn joined the fold where you can now promote individual posts just like you can on all of those other platforms. So pay to play, people. Pay to play is here. And the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time to start is today. So if you've ever thought about posting on LinkedIn to, again, network with people, increase job opportunities, have people see you in a different light, today is the day, because Jeff is right. More is more. We're only going to see more and more sponsored posts on LinkedIn. So the first best time to start was back when I told you to start a couple years ago, but the second best time is right now. So if you haven't already thought about doing it, definitely start to do some posts on LinkedIn, because you hear me talk about the platform a lot. I champion the platform a lot. I think it's a great place for you to invest time and energy. And I will also say, if you are totally perplexed and you haven't been joining these sessions and you have absolutely no idea what to post, you can always go to whatdoipost.com. And I gave you, I think it's like 52 ideas of things to post with examples. So no excuses of like, oh, Kim told me I should post, but like, I don't know what to do about that. Yeah, because that is a lie. And I even gave you a resource. So that is just not true. Going back really quickly to the books, I wanted to also provide one framework that I have found really helpful in my sort of everyday life. And it has to do with books, and it has to do with reading, and it has to do with kind of our general business overview today of like nerding out and getting curious and really trying to explore. Is that if you don't make time to do this type of stuff, it won't happen. And you've heard me say this over and over that if you don't make time, it won't happen. And I know this, and I know this because you are busy. You are busy, and the dog barfs, and you have to go to the grocery store. And oh my gosh, we need to pick up this prescription that I just forgot about. And the car needs a repair. And you have a million things going on. And so if you don't plan it, it won't happen. If you don't make a plan for it, it will go to the end of the to-do list right there with cleaning out the garage. And we all know that our garages look like a hot mess. So it never is time to clean the garage, even though it's always on the to-do list to clean the garage. So I use clean the garage because there's also things on our life and work to-do lists that are also the equivalent of like clean the garage, you know? And so what was always happening for me is I would tell people, oh, I love, doing really interesting things. And I love, reading interesting books and extending my learning. And what I found was, 70% of the time I did a pretty good job at that. But 30% of the time when life got busy and work got busy, and for some people, as we head into summer, summer might be a little more busy than normal for you. What I found is that when times were easy, I had no problem. When times got busy, fell off a cliff. Literally just jumped right off. Couldn't do it. So instead, what I started to do is in Notion, which is where I take a lot of my notes. I don't know where you take notes. Maybe it's an Evernote. Maybe it's in Asana. Maybe it's in Notion. Maybe it's on the Notes app in your iPhone. I don't know, but wherever you put your notes, or maybe it's on a pad and a paper, whatever that is. But in Notion, I made a page and it has every month of the year. So January, February, March, April, May, all the way down, little semicolon. And under that is 2 bullet points. The first bullet point says, books I read. Pretty self-explanatory. In January, what books did I read? And I say read in quotations because I also count audio books as reading. You can say what books I consumed. Maybe that's more grammatically correct because you're consuming it either by your eyeballs or you're consuming it by your ears. So what books did I consume? And then that tells me really obviously, if I have a sudden, I have 2 books in January, go Kim. I have 3 books in February, go Kim. I get to March, no books, because I realize I'm too busy with my like funsy podcasts. I'm listening to my funsy podcast. I'm listening to my funsy music. And I realize, oopsie doopsie, didn't actually read any books. So it's been a really stark reminder of me to kind of, when things get busy, or maybe you don't notice that you've been listening to like a lot of funsy podcasts or listening to a lot of funsy music and not maybe necessarily listening to a lot of books or not making time to sit down and read those books, then the books don't get read. The books don't get consumed. So first bullet point is books I read, semicolon, with the list. And the second bullet point says culture with a semicolon. And what goes in culture is anything that is culturally relevant, anything that is out of the norm that I did that month. Maybe I went to a new green market in my town that I've never been to before. Maybe I visited a museum that I have never visited before. Maybe I volunteered with an organization to clean up the lake trail, and I've never done that before. It is basically anything that is not my normal life, work, grocery store, seeing my in-laws. Like, we all get stuck in this kind of routine of like, errands, pick up the prescriptions, like, fill out the car with gas, like our every day. So again, we can say things like, I'm a very curious person and I love discovering new things and I love doing new things. But are you actually doing them? So again, every month I try at least once to maybe I take a pizza making class with a friend. Maybe I again volunteer with a new group. Whatever it is, just something that, and by the way, even if you do one per month, that's 12, which when you really think about it, 365 days in an entire year, and you spent 12 of them doing like one new thing, one new beach cleanup, one new pizza making class with a friend, one new walk around a museum, one new found a new hiking trail that I wanted to check out. When you actually think about it, that's not very good. I'm not going to lie to you. 12 out of 365. I don't know what that math is, but that's a very low percentage. I want to say that's like below 1%. So we can say all day long that we're curious people. We like trying new things. We're cultured. We, like to experience new stuff, but the proof is in the pudding, my friend. And the proof is really there if you actually take the time to stop and write it down. So I offered that template from me to you during this sharing session because that template has really helped me put into solid space what I am actually saying is my goal. So I know you've experienced somebody like this in your life who will say, I really need to lose weight. I really need to diet. And then in 2 days, you have dinner with them and they order the French fries and the Coke. And you're like, thought we just had this conversation that you were not going to do that. So it's a good way for me to kind of have that with myself. So I say that I want to read books or I say that I want to try new things, but am I actually consuming books and am I actually trying new things? So for instance, I am going to put that my nutrition experiment with ChatGPT, that will go on my culture list for the month. Why? Because that is something new that I did that I've never done before, that I did for a week, that I did a little experiment with. So again, we say all the times we want to try all these new things, but are we really doing them? I love that James just gave us another book read as we're talking about what books that we can be reading each month. And he recommends The Laws of Life, Ditch the System, Design Your Life. So again, kind of talking about designing your life, and really thinking about how to do that in a really constructive way. So I love that Liz had said, I'm always questioning what did I do this year every December. This is such a good point. And Liz, I've now been doing this for about 3 years. And what is kind of fun, I will say, is sometimes I will look back just for like nostalgia's sake. I'll look back on like 2022 and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that's right. Like, in January, my husband and I, Fernando and I, we did that bread making class. Like that was really fun that we did that together. So, it's kind of fun to also look back. It's almost like a little adventure diary, if you will, of kind of all the new things that you did or all the cool experiences that you had, went to this like new museum or anything like that. So I offer that to you. It's been helpful for me. It's been my go-to in Notion for a couple years now, but perhaps it will be helpful for you because believe it or not, we are almost in June. I know the year is almost halfway over. So I wanted to offer you that template because if at the beginning of the year, you like me kind of gave those resolutions or gave those goals and said like, I want to read more, I want to be more curious, perhaps this can be a way to help hold you accountable to those things. So definitely think that could be helpful for you. So, oh my gosh, where has the time gone? It is almost time for us to wrap up, but I just wanted to say again how amazing these suggestions have been, these book suggestions. And again, if you're listening to this on audio while you wash the dishes or fold the laundry. We will put a lot of these recommendations in the show notes so you don't feel like, oh my gosh, Kim didn't read every single book recommendation. Like, I'm going to miss them. We will put them in the show notes, so they will be there for you. You will not miss these book recommendations because I know that they are going to be amazing. And I know because I'm currently reading some of the book recommendations that I got from these chats. And I am going to take these book recommendations today and I'm going to add them to my TBR list, my to be read list, so that I can have a fresh batch of books for the summer that I know that I can dig into. So I know we're not really doing homework because this was more of a discussion with you and I and kind of digging in on like business and geeking out and kind of geeking out over coffee for a second, as one does. But I will say, if I could offer you something, it's that I will offer you the chance for the next week to try using, and again, it could be ChatGPT, it could be Claude, it could be Gronk, it could be any of them. But try using it not as a Google, not as a search engine, not as a, what's the best way to get from West Palm Beach to Orlando and visit Disney World, but instead try using it as a life coach, as Sam Altman said, as the 20-something said is using it. Do it for a couple days. Do it for a whole week if you're feeling adventurous. I would love to hear how it's going for you. You can message me or send me a voice note or email me, whatever's easiest. But I would love to hear kind of what you found from that experiment, because I shared with you what I've been finding. And I think that you're going to be surprised. I really do. I think in some ways you're going to be like, oh my gosh, like this was uncomfortable at first, but now I'm kind of seeing the light. I'm kind of seeing what people are getting excited about with this. So I offer that to you as, a really kind of cool opportunity that hopefully you'll check out and see what's going on. So I'm glad that Liz was like, this was such a great session. Like, I love these types of lives. And Jeff was like, yes, I know. Sometimes with these lives, I'm like, oh, people are going to be like bored, or we don't care about the nerdy stuff that you care about, Kim, but some people do. Some people do care about this nerdy stuff. And a big hi to Giacomo as well. It sounds like you were out at dinner, but wanted to come by and say hi. So big hi to you as well. So again, this was super fun. I'm so excited to hear what comes out of kind of experimenting with these different resources that we've shared together today and what you find from it. So again, so appreciate you being here. The time has flown by. I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for all of your goodness and hot tips. I really appreciate it. In the next coming weeks, we are going to be talking to some super interesting people. I promise it's not just all me and my nerdy stuff. Next week, I'm really excited. We have our friend Lorraine Lee, who had a new book come out, which I'm really excited to talk about. It's called Unforgettable Presence: Get Seen, Gain Influence, and Catapult Your Career. It came out recently. I'm excited to dig in with her and talk about that. But you can see any of our future sessions over at getcoffeewithkim.com. We will send you a really fun calendar invite so that you don't miss any of these sessions, because if you're like me, you live and die by your calendar. So if that's the case, head over to getcoffeewithkim.com and we will send a calendar invite straight to you. So again, thank you so much. It was so good seeing you. I'm so glad we got a chance to catch up. I missed you like crazy last week, but I'm glad we could spend some time together today. And I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, same time, same place, with our friend Lorraine, digging in to all things getting noticed and making sure that you are showing up as the best version of yourself. So I will see you soon.